Hello and welcome to the beer review where I do whatever I want. The get-up will make sense in a moment. But to start, we're going to talk about our beer. We've got Hazy Little Thing. So Hazy Little Thing is an IPA. It is by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, based out of Chico, California, and Mills River, North Carolina. And it is 6.7%. 6.7%. I like at the top here, it says family owned, operated, and argued over. I like that. So let's crack it open. For our color, it is a little bit orange, and it is quite hazy, I would say. Cannot see through that for nothing. Literally, I can't see that through anything. A little bit of foam on top. Not too much, though. Not too much. It smells really good. I can tell that it smells like smooth. It smells fruity. It smells fruity, where it's got a little bit of hop notes to it, but it is fruit forward. Let's get into the taste test. Cheers. This is a really solid IPA. It definitely has a bitter bite to it and a hop bite to it that is characteristic of an IPA, but it is really smooth and has very minimal, lingering bitterness to it, so that adds to the smoothness factor of it. I think this beer benefits from keeping a relatively low alcohol percentage for an IPA. Any higher alcohol percentage, I think, would take away any flavors that are present here. It doesn't have any distinct flavors to it, so it is still just easy to drink. It's good. It is good. It's great. But because it is very drinkable, and because this has a special place in my heart, I've had many of these before, many, with my bros. I'm going to be a little bit biased and say a 7 out of 10. Tastes like an IPA without having the violent IPA flavors that sometimes puts me off of IPAs, at least. I would up it more if there was a distinct flavor to it, but it is nice and fruity and smooth. Now, let's get into our topic of discussion. This beer has nothing to do with what we're talking about, so let's just get into it. We're talking about some anthropomorphic cat content from the 70s. Huh? So to start, we are going to talk about Fritz the Cat. It is originally a comic strip by Robert Crumb, who he's an interesting guy. He makes interesting stuff. But I'm going to go straight into talking about the movie. So the movie was directed by Ralph Bakshi in 1972. This was his first film, and also the first animated movie to get an X rating. So that's an interesting way to make your debut. Literally the taglines on the poster says, "We're not X-rated for nothing, baby." And he's X-rated and animated. So, it features animals acting on animal instincts, I'll say. But with human raunchiness, nastiness, morals, and sin. I'm going to give you a little bit of a synopsis about it. So it follows our main guy, Fritz the Cat. And it kind of just feels like a lot of side quests for him. So, literally, within the first minute of the movie, it has a guy explicitly taking out his worm to take a leak, while some other guy is yammering about something. I don't even know what. And I feel like that decently sets the stage for the rest of how the movie goes. So, he's egotistical, with a huge savior complex and a lot of privilege. That is very evident from the get-go, and I'd say is one of the main points of the movie. So it starts with Fritz, and he's trying to get women by offering them enlightenment.
Yes. Together we shall all learn the real existential essence of the life force.
So he takes these women to a party, and they all get crazy in the bathtub, to put it lightly, and so does kind of everyone else at the function. The cops eventually show up, and Fritz manages to just weasel his way out of it. So next, we see Fritz criticizing college. he's saying he's trying to hang out with his buddies, and they're studying, and so he's critiquing that studying for exams is a waste of time, and that they should all be experiencing the world and learning that way. So he proceeds to burn all of his notes to revolt against college, but then immediately is like, oh, I probably needed those notes. I kind of need to study for that exam. My parents are going to be mad at me. But nothing negative really seems to happen. The whole school seems like it is on fire. It's not brought up again. There's no negative consequences for him specifically. So he makes it out again. So shifting scenery, the movie starts touching more on race issues as we go into a bar that is exclusively occupied by these crow characters. Definitely stereotyping black communities a little bit, for sure. The movie at least heavily calls out the white savior complex, though. Fritz attempts to help and advocate for them, but they belittle him, pretty much, and let him know that he will never understand their experience and their struggles.
I studied the race problem. See, I know.
You don't know nothing about the race problem. You gotta be a crow to know about the race problem. You know what I mean? Do you dig where I'm at? You know what I'm talking about?
My soul is tortured and tormented by this racial crisis.
No shit.
So this crow guy in the green suit, Duke the Crow, ends up liking Fritz, and they go out, they steal a car, and Fritz goes crazy. This sequence seems like it emphasizes his immature urges to revolt against normality. He's just reckless with no real substance to it, and no serious consequences that impact him personally. So anyway, Duke takes him to some other guy's place, and Fritz sleeps with that guy's woman. This just boosts his urge for activism. So Fritz goes back downtown, and he's preaching about a revolution. The cops get involved, and we can probably guess where that goes. As much as Fritz is sitting there trying to start something and trying to make a big movement, the second that something actually starts happening, he runs away again. Definitely one of the most frustrating parts of the movie is he literally has a spotlight on him and the police just walk right by. The police just walk right by. That is definitely where it is touching on some serious issues. So my favorite scene is in this sequence, and it spoils the movie. So if you want to watch it for yourself and experience it for yourself, then go to this timestamp to skip what I'm about to talk about. So Duke, he is shot. He's shot. It is an incredibly upsetting scene, just with the themes that it's touching on and what it's criticizing and what it's talking about. And it's especially when the movie has been relatively a lot more comical and lighthearted. This dark note just hits really strong. And the imagery is so artistic and so cool, though. When he gets shot, it's a pool break. His final heartbeats are the pool balls going into the holes, progressively getting slower. It is crazy. I don't think I blinked for a second during that scene. It was just captivating. It was art. When so far this movie has kind of just been a whole lot of raunchiness. It definitely makes you want to take it a lot more seriously and not just blow this off as some freaky furry film. We're actually being serious here. We're being serious here. And it really proves that adult animation can be such a cool medium that you can do a lot of serious artsy stuff with. So anyways, back to our Fritz. That riot had pretty much no impact on him and isn't really brought back up. Weird and frustrating, right? Okay. One of the women from the beginning comes back, and they end up being like in a relationship or something, and they drive off across the country together. So they run out of gas. They're in the middle of the desert. They're stuck there. That kind of touches on themes of she's a lot more mature than he is, and he's immature, but he just doesn't care. He walks off to go get more gas, but he's just like, whatever, screw this. And then he ends up finding himself amongst a tweaked out rabbit who is adorned with symbols from a not so good dictator of the German variety. If you catch my drift, and this bunny does not treat his woman very well. They all go to the cemetery together for whatever reason, and meet up with these freaky lizard people in robes. And bad things happen. And bad things happen. Not to Fritz, of course, obviously. But bad things happen that are also pretty upsetting. And then the lizard lady takes him to go explode the power plant. Also still touching on some weird kind of revolutionary Activism? Revolutionary activism and anarchy. But he, like, doesn't really want to, because this lizard lady, for whatever reason, is, like, making him do it, it seems like. And then he's, like, trying to be like, oh, screw this, I'm not doing this. And then he explodes, because he's on top of the power plant with explosives that have already been lit. You think after being exploded, he is going to finally face the consequences of his actions, right? So he's in the hospital, and all the women from the beginning of the movie come and visit him. Seems like, okay, maybe he's met his match. No. He ends up just getting freaky with all of the women again in the hospital. So yet again, he came out of everything unscathed and doesn't really care about anything else except getting his socks off, his rocks off, whatever it is, whatever. You know what I mean. So my thoughts on Fritz the Cat is the first time I watched this was a while ago, and I think it was hard because just kind of getting really caught up in the sheer raunchiness and weirdness of it all, and the fact that it was really fast-paced for the most part. Like, he's somewhere dealing with some kind of something and criticizing something, and then all of a sudden that's not really talked about anymore and he's somewhere else criticizing something else. And I just was maybe weirded out and was like, they're naked! You know, watching it again and really focusing on some of the things are that it's talking about, it's like, okay, bypassing all the weird stuff, this is interesting, and it has a lot of important things to criticize. So it's certainly an interesting watch. And a great piece of adult animation history. Like, pivotal for it. So now I'm gonna go get another beer, because I'm talking about something else. I'm excited about our next topic of discussion because I literally spent all day reading. Look at that second pour. Ooh, that looks gorgeous. So now the next thing that inspired this whole video, Omaha. Omaha the Cat Dancer. So, Fritz the Cat inspired this comic. By the style, you can kind of already tell it's cat people engaging in adult behaviors. It's by Reed Waller and Kate Worley. The first issue came out in 1978. So for some background info, Reed Waller, along with this guy Ken Fletcher, they initially created a comic series in 1976 called Voodoo, which would feature comics of stories about anthropomorphic animals from many different artists. Omaha the Cat Dancer was one of them. As described in the introduction of the first issue of that series, it kind of came about almost as a dare. Someone had said to Waller, there's not enough
intercourse
in funny animal comics. You know, because there's always someone to say that there's not enough of that and stuff, right? But Waller didn't want to just portray, run-of-the-mill explicit content. He actually wanted to portray it in a way where there were emotions and to have people actually care about it and sympathize with it. And so another interesting thing that he talks about in the introduction and why it's the use of animals and not people, he believed that humans in cartoons, as in comics, would never come across as natural. It's so much harder to get them to be perfect when they're static comic cartoon images. It's just not natural and it's kind of weird. But anthropomorphic animals don't have to necessarily fit into a perfect human mold because they're animals. So it fits right into a comic. Because the cartoony animals fit into their cartoony worlds, the drama of the story can be more effective because their worlds are more believable. The intent of Omaha was to be a satire about blue laws, which are typically local laws, and how that relates to adult performers. But with all of the characters and the drama unfolding, this became a story that came into itself. It really did a lot more than what it started with and what the original intent was supposed to be. So Kate Worley hopped on as the writer, as one of the writers, and they created, I think, about 20 volumes altogether.
I was wrong. I
was confusing volume and the issue number. The whole thing is on the internet. Volume 1 through 6 is the whole thing. And I don't know how many individual comics that is in itself, but definitely more than 20, I would think. I read through, that's volume 10, but I read through the first 6 volumes online. And I was hooked onto the story like crazy. So this is a soap opera drama. I had my jaw to the floor at certain points. It's just a soap opera with anthropomorphic animals. It has great character building, I feel like, and I just was so invested in the drama of it all. One of the main themes is the corruption of people in higher up positions and their immoral tactics and deviant behaviors, and how our main character, Omaha, navigates that environment as an adult performer. So, there is a lot of explicit content, but there is substance to it. Almost right away, both explicit content was showed, but then immediately there was emotions involved. And I don't think Fritz the Cat had, emotions involved with explicit content really at all. And in Omaha, it's there for the drama of it, and relationship building, and dynamics revolving around the morality of explicit content. It could be argued, for sure, that the extent of explicitness in this is not necessary to tell the story, but understanding those themes of morality that are brought up, and as the reader reading something like this, it made me think a little bit deeper about it. I would say, going back to Waller's introduction, he wanted it to be explicit. He wanted this content to be explicit. Genuinely, a lot of the interactions and a lot of the explicitness is natural for the content of what we're talking about and with the subjects of it. It made the relationship dynamics seem almost more understandable and deeper, and so I think it worked out. So I don't want to go into detail about how the story plays out in Omaha the Cat Dancer, because there is a lot, and I don't think me explaining it is exciting. It is just so interesting and so dramatic and so many twists and turns. The first 6 volumes are online if you look for them. I really do recommend it if you are an adult. If you are an adult, obviously, and if you don't mind that explicit content. Them being anthropomorphic animals in these situations is potentially off-putting. Absolutely. At least me, I completely forgot about it. I completely forgot, because it's just such human dynamics and drama that I was like, yeah, I'm there. I'm there. Meow. So yeah, I recommend Fritz the Cat and Omaha the Cat Dancer. Both very, very different, but on the surface seem very, very similar. So if you stayed for this whole thing and listened to me talk about some weird stuff and some interesting stuff and things that maybe you're not interested in, or maybe you are, if you stayed for my yammerings, thank you. And I will see you next time, where I'm going to be playing some Roblox games. I will see you next time.